The History of Hot Chocolate by Sage. One of the best parts of the winter season is coming inside to a nice warm cup of hot chocolate. It's easy to make. Just grab a packet from the cupboard and add hot water. But do you know where hot chocolate came from? You may be surprised to find out that chocolate started out in the jungles of Central America over 3,500 years ago. Before we dive too deep into the history, you need to know some basic facts about hot chocolate. The Theobroma cacao, or the cacao tree, produces pods of cacao beans, which are what chocolate are made from. Theobroma means food of the gods, which is what the Mesoamericans thought of the tree. Cacao itself comes from the Mayan word caca and the Aztec word cacatol, both meaning bitter water, as chocolate was only consumed as a beverage. The cacao beans are harvested, roasted, peeled, and crushed into a powder, which is then used to make chocolate. The terminology can get a little confusing, but cacao refers to the plant or bean before it's processed, and chocolate refers to anything made from the bean. There are three main types of cacao trees. The first is Forastero. Forastero is the most common cacao type, accounting for 80% of the world's production. Forastero is hardy and the least susceptible to disease, but many find it the least tasty. The next type is Criollo. Criollo cacao only makes up 5% of production. It is difficult to grow, but it has a refined taste. It is used to make fine chocolates. The last cacao type is Trinitario. Making up 15% of production, Trinitario is a hybrid between Forastero and Criollo. It is hardy like Forastero, but it has the taste of Criollo. Now we'll move on to the history. Nobody knows exactly when or who found cacao first. We do know, however, that it was discovered by the people of Central America around 1500 AD. It is believed that the Olmecs were the first to harvest the cacao beans about 3,500 years ago. The ancient process is similar to how it's done today. The Olmecs took the powder, mixed it with water, and added chilies, corn, or honey to sweeten it. This was called axcotl, meaning foam water, which later became the Mexican word chocolatl. This refers to the practice they had of pouring the liquid back and forth between containers, sometimes from great heights, to make the bitter drink frothy. Chocolate was believed to have intoxicating, stimulating, and even magical properties. These properties in the chocolate were due to the presence of theobromine, an alkaloid related to caffeine. As time went on, knowledge of the cacao beans and chocolate passed on to the Mayans and then to the Aztecs. Chocolate was reserved for priests, military officers, high government officials, distinguished warriors, for religious rituals, and occasionally for the sacrificial victims. It was said that the Aztec ruler Montezuma drank 50 cups of chocolate a day. That's 350 cups a week. Cacao beans became so valuable they were used as a currency. You could purchase a tamale for 1 bean or a turkey for 100 beans. The Mesoamericans were the only people to have discovered cacao and chocolate, but how long did they keep it to themselves? It was about 3,000 years after it was discovered by the Olmecs that any other country found out about it. In 1502, Christopher Columbus happened to come across a boat full of natives who had cacao beans with them. Columbus took the beans back to his ship to show Ferdinand and Isabella, who were greatly unimpressed. He didn't discover what they were used for, only describing them as almond-looking. In the early 1500s, Spanish conquistadors learned about the chocolate drink as they explored nowadays Mexico. Hernan Cortez, seeking gold and silver in the New World, instead discovered chocolate. When Cortez arrived at the Aztec capital, Tenochtitlan, in 1519, he witnessed how chocolate was consumed in Montezuma's royal court. The Aztec method of making chocolate was described as, "The Indians, from whom we borrow it, are not very nice in doing it. They roast the kernels in earthen pots, then free them from their skins, and afterwards crush and grind them between two stones, and so form cakes of it with their hands. In 1528, after the conquering of the Aztecs, Hernan Cortez returned to Spain with his ship full of cacao beans and chocolate-making equipment. The Spaniards soon adapted chocolate to their tastes. They added sugar and vanilla to sweeten the originally bitter drink. They also began drinking it heated instead of cold. Spain liked their chocolate beverage so much they didn't trade it for 100 years, but with intermarriages and travel between countries, it didn't stay secret for much longer after that. In 1643, Spanish Princess Maria Theresa sent a chest full of chocolate to her fiancé, King Louis XIV of France. Chocolate was a big hit in France, and it soon spread across the English Channel. Hot chocolate was so popular that chocolate houses, similar to coffee houses, were built so wealthy people could gather to drink chocolate and talk. The first chocolate house opened in London in 1657. Chocolate soon spread across the rest of Europe. It then made its way across the Atlantic Ocean to the American colonies. The earliest record of chocolate or cacao beans in the colonies was in 1686. The first chocolate factory in America was opened in Dorchester, Massachusetts in 1765 by Dr. James Baker. Around this time, Great Britain conquered the tropical island of Jamaica, giving them their own source of ingredients for making chocolate. As demand increased, many countries began establishing their own plantations. The demand for chocolate was very high in the American colonies, resulting in the importation of around 320 tons of cacao beans in 1773. Drinking chocolate soon became available to all classes of people. A lot of people probably thought chocolate couldn't get any better, but some, like Dutch chemist Coenraad van Houten, thought improvements could still be made. In 1828, Houten invented the cocoa press. The cocoa press would squeeze the fatty cacao butter from the cacao beans, leaving behind a dry cake that could be pulverized and treated with alkaline salts to make it sweeter. The remaining powder, called Dutch cocoa, was easier to make drinks with because it dissolved into liquids better. Hot cocoa was born, a little different than hot chocolate. The main difference between them is that hot chocolate still contains the cacao butter while hot cocoa does not. A few years later, in 1847, Englishman Joseph Fry made the world's first solid chocolate bar. He did this by adding some of the cacao butter back into the cacao powder, making an easily moldable chocolate. By 1868, a small company called Cadbury popped up and began selling chocolate boxes in England. Soon after the invention of the chocolate bar, milk chocolate came into existence. Daniel Peter and Henry Nestle made this delightful treat by adding powdered milk to chocolate in 1876. 3 years later, Rudolf Lindt developed the conching machine. The chocolate made by this machine had a velvety texture and melted on the tongue. In the late 1800s and the early 1900s, other chocolate companies came about, including Hershey's and Mars. Chocolate bars soon became much more popular than hot chocolate. By the 21st century, chocolate-making techniques have been refined into highly controlled mass production processes. Today, you can enjoy hot chocolate or a chocolate bar by taking a trip to your local grocery store. What better time to enjoy hot chocolate than in the winter? The next time you settle down with a nice warm cup of hot chocolate, remember that it's there, all thanks to the Olmecs of Central America. The end.